Here in Lincoln, roughly 57% of voters voted to leave the EU. And now, with the exit date on the horizon, the city remains divided.
Why not? If we don't do anything, this is apathy. We let them govern.
If MPs reject the Prime Minister's revised deal, we could end up leaving the EU on March 29th without any kind of agreement in place. For trade, that would mean reverting to World Trade Organization rules, the basic scaffolding from which new trade deals can be built.
The World Trade Organization came into creation in 1995, but actually followed on from an organisation called the GATT, General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, which was formed in 1948. And basically it sets up a series of rules about how world trade will be governed. So in effect, when we actually leave the EU, we will be bound by, or we hope we're bound by, World Trade Organization rules, and also, of course, lots of other international agreements which we're part of.
And if we do leave with a no deal and revert to WTO terms, what does that look like on day one when that happens?
Well, first of all, of course, is we haven't completed our negotiations with the World Trade Organization itself, and many of the people we actually have deals with have yet to fully sign the required agreements to actually make everything work properly. So there is some doubt about actually what the conditions will be, because the Department for developing that, Liam Fox, has not made quite as much progress as he hoped he would do.
Currently we operate with the EU under 750 or more separate legal agreements. All of those would stop. That covers every aspect of the way in which life operates currently in the country. That would bring Dover to a standstill automatically, because customs checks would be imposed at the borders. It would force us to go on to World Trade Organization trading terms. There isn't another country in the world, and there are 164 members of the WTO, there isn't another country in the world that trades on WTO rules alone.
Essentially, there's two things we need to bear in mind. First of all, of course, is that many of the ships which actually are heading for the UK from outside of the EU have actually set sail. So many of the rules, actually, funny enough, if we don't get a deal, will be quite difficult for us to actually get over. So there will be some real issues about that kind of transition to WTO. Yeah.
Right. And is that transition temporary? Would there be a time where, after a while, we've had the chance to get everything negotiated and sorted? Could we be better in the long term, or do you think there will be issues in the long run as well?
Brexit is not about trade, and it's not about the economy, it's about political things. So no one with any kind of respectable credentials has suggested we're better off with Brexit. Essentially, the only scenario where the UK's GDP would rise more rapidly post-Brexit would be if we reduce the quality of environmental controls, and our labour regulations were altered quite significantly. So essentially we're talking about a very much changed society if we decide to go down that route. So mainly we'd expect to be slightly worse off than we might have expected to be. That doesn't mean to say we'll be poorer, but we won't get richer at the same speed that perhaps some of the other economies in Europe will do.
And is it true that when we leave, certain tariffs will jump up? I think I read something about car imports will jump to like 10%, and right now it's much lower.
The overall level of tariffs in and out of the European Union is quite low. But it's clearly a question of what tariffs we impose and what tariffs they impose. So it's all that's yet to be fully discovered. But essentially, of course, if our car exports go through the continental market, which is what Nissan are aiming to do, and of course Toyota, then of course we will have to be paying a tariff on cars entering the European Union. Yeah.
So that would immediately mean we would have to default to tariffs, set tariffs on our goods, or have tariffs set upon our goods. That would push the cost up. Businesses would be in deep trouble very, very quickly. So for all these reasons, no deal is simply the worst possible outcome. And we're trying to talk to people about that and the other possible outcomes in the hope that they can take an interest and begin to consider what they could do about it.
The only problem is, of course, is that where you have supply chains, if the supply chain gets disrupted, and of course Dominic Raab, the former Brexit Secretary, made a big point about the fact that he hadn't realised how important Dover was, for example. So every year there are about 2.6 million trucks go through on the ferries from Dover, and about 1.6 million trucks go through on the train link. So if there are hold-ups there, then of course that will be a serious embarrassment. Now, we do send things from Lincoln via the North Sea ports, and I don't think that'll be quite the challenge that Dover will be, but anything that goes down to Dover and heading through that kind of main corridor will find things, or could find things, more difficult. You never know. You know, the dream scenario is that we wake up on the 30th of March and everything will be perfect, but without the deal it's somewhat uncertain.
And do you think, is there an ideal way out of this? Do you think do we need a deal? Do we need perhaps a people's vote? Or
well, okay, number of scenarios. First of all, of course, is there is a consensus in the House of Commons for what we call soft Brexit, which would be joining the customs union. That way there's no tariff issues, and of course compliance with the single market. We're going to have to comply with the single market anyway, because we need to sell products into Europe and we need to meet European technical standards, which are coincidentally the same as our technical standards. So that's not really a problem as long as we bear that in mind. So the best scenario would be either stay or to leave on very soft Brexit terms. The harsher it becomes, the more difficult it becomes in terms of regulations at the border, and in particular, even where we have free trade, there are issues with things called rules of origin, which basically means we have to prove that the goods that we manufacture actually are created in the UK, and that can be quite a complex process.
Well, the People's Vote campaign is designed to take the issue back to the country. In 2016, when the vote was called, there were just simply two questions. Do you want to remain in the European Union? Do you want to leave the European Union? Nobody specified anything other than that. And now that we know the details, now that we know what the consequences of the decision look as though they're going to be, the argument is that as the people made the original decision in 2016 based on little information, they should have the right to make another decision based on much more information that's now available to us.
I think it's a very uncertain period of time at the moment, and I think most of us would think that it's time the politicians worked out some kind of a solution. I think most people are rightly concerned. Older people seem to be less worried about the economic factors, but I think the real concern is that young people see their futures being diminished because of the current uncertainty.
the next big date on the Brexit calendar is the 12th of March, when Parliament gets a new vote on May's deal. If that's rejected, MPs will then vote on whether to leave on the 29th of March with no deal at all, or to extend Article 50. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Would no deal be bad for the economy? Does that even matter? Is the will of the people not being met? Or do we ourselves deserve to vote again? Keelan Balderson, wideshut.co.uk